From navigating retirement to more of your tax questions, it is Money Monday, a segment here at 4 o'clock where we talk about easy to understand ways to navigate our finances. Here to help us out is our financial expert and friend, Paul Hood from HoodCPAs. Paul, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, Brian.
A new survey is out. It's from Clever, finding 76% of retirees have some form of debt and 67% have a balance on their credit cards. You know, some may associate, Paul, credit card debt with younger people, but that's not always the case. What are some ways retirees can pay off debt on a fixed income?
Well, Brian, what you got to understand is people go through two phases in life. They go through the accumulation phase of life, where risk and volatility is something you want to harness, and it's less of a cash flow strategy and more of an asset building strategy. When you get into retirement and you're moving to what's called the distribution phase of life, and it's more about cash flow and not about assets. So sometimes, you got to be real careful of taking investments, even to pay off credit card debt, because it's all about cash flow, especially since, and I'm not a big proponent of bankruptcy, but the bankruptcy laws are there for a purpose. So the bottom line is I would tell retirees, maybe not get too excited about paying it off. Let's be constructive. Let's try to maybe do some refinancing. A lot of times we see retirees that have equity in their home and they have credit card debt, and we may go down that path. But Brian, what we first have to do is to identify why they have credit card debt and what decisions went into that led to having credit card debt. So first thing is we have to evaluate their decision making. Second thing is we have to be cognizant of cash flow.
We also have a few viewer questions that came this week surrounding taxes. Chris wrote in saying, I have driven for Uber and DoorDash for the past year and a half. I now want to buy a home. What do I need to do in order to be approved for a loan? I don't want to claim any deductions so that my income on my tax return looks higher. So,
he needs to be real careful, because you don't want to get into a situation to where you're committing fraud or anything. I mean, your deductions, but you don't have to be aggressive with things. You can do things that inflate your net versus your gross without being aggressive and taking deductions. So one thing he also has to worry about, if he gets audited, the IRS has in the past saying, no, you've got to take those deductions, because there's negative tax things like earned income credit, child tax credit that are based on your income. So when your income gets too low, you don't get any of those. So the bottom line is you have to be real careful. Now, what some people will do is go ahead and set up an S Corp, put themselves on the payroll to pay themselves a W-2, because banks oftentimes prefer to deal with somebody with a W-2 than have the self-employed, and they oftentimes don't look at the profit or loss on the business as long as they have a W-2. So, careful, but there is some planning to do that he might be able to position himself better for a loan.
All right, Paul, thank you so much. We have a question from Matt. We're going to get to Matt's question next week. So if Matt is watching right now, we'll get to his question next week. Paul, thank you so much for the great advice as always. And if you're watching and you have a financial question you want us to consider for next week, you can send in your question right now to moneymonday@griffin.news.